Welcome back, everyone. In the last video on ellipses, we talked about the general form and the standard form and the locus definition. What we're going to do now is we're going to continue on and we're going to take some equations for ellipses that are already in standard form, some that need to be put in standard form, and locate the center, the length of the major axis, the minor axis, or the endpoints of the major and the minor axis, and the focal points. You will see in the notes there's some references here to these problems like A and B where it's eliminating the parameter. Again, in a normal class we would do those, but because of the remote learning, we're going to skip those. So we're going to start right here with letters C through H. So letter C, for example, you can see that that is the equation of an ellipse in standard form. And from that, we can see that this ellipse has coordinates of its center at 0, 0. I know that the larger denominator is a squared. So I know that a squared is 16, so a is going to be equal to 4. I know the smaller denominator is b squared, so b is going to be equal to 2. And I also know the relationship a squared is equal to b squared plus c squared, and c is the distance from the center to the focal points. So if we solve that relationship for c, we will have 16 is equal to 4 plus 12. So c squared is equal to 12, or c is equal to the square root of 12, which we can write as 2 root 3. So as I mentioned in the last video, based on knowing the coordinates of the center, A, B, and C, and which direction this ellipse is longer, we can figure out various things. So, for example, the endpoints of the major axis, that is the axis that is the longer length of the ellipse. And if we start at 0, 0 and go 4 units, A, in each direction, because it's horizontal, we would do 0 minus 4 and 0 plus 4. So the endpoints of our major axis are going to be plus minus 4, comma 0. The minor axis, which is associated with B, because this ellipse is horizontal, we're going to go from the center up and down B units. So the minor axis endpoints are going to be 0 plus minus 2. And then finally, the focal points, their coordinates are going to be determined by C, and the focal points lie along the major axis. So we start at the center 0, 0, and we move plus or minus 2 root 3 in each direction horizontally. So the focal points will have coordinates plus or minus 2 root 3, comma 0. I would now like you to pause the video and do problem D for yourself, and we'll come back and check that in just a moment. All right, by looking at problem D, you could see the center of the ellipse is at 0, 0. A squared is 12, so A is the square root of 12, or 2 root 3. B squared is 8, or B squared is 8, so B is the square root of 8, or 2 root 2. And C squared would be equal to 4, which means C is equal to 2. We also know that this ellipse is longer in the vertical direction, so we start at the center and we go up and down A units, or 2 root 3. That should be a 2 root 3 plus or minus 2 root 3 to get the endpoints of the major axis. We start at the center and move left and right B units to get to the endpoints of the minor axis, plus or minus 2 root 2, comma 0. And we move up and down from the center because the major axis is vertical to get to the focal points, 2 units. So 0, comma, plus or minus 2. All right, I'm going to do letters E and F for you as you follow along, and then I'm going to have you pause the video and do letters G and H by yourself before we finish up the video by checking your answers to letters G and H. So here we go. You can see that letter E is an ellipse in standard form, and it has center with coordinates 3, -2. A squared is equal to 16, so A is equal to 4. B squared is equal to 9, so B is equal to 3. And C squared is equal to, B squared plus C squared is equal to A squared. So you'd have to add 9 and 7 to get 16. So C is equal to the square root of 7. I also noticed that the larger denominator is under the y term, so this is going to be a vertical ellipse. So the endpoints of the major axis are going to be found by starting at the point 3, -2 and moving up and down 4 units from there. So the endpoints would be 3, -2 plus 4 is going to be +2, and 3, -2 minus 4 is going to be -6. The endpoints of the minor axis are going to be found by starting at the center, and in this case, moving left and right because this ellipse is longer in the vertical direction, shorter in the horizontal direction. So we're going to start at the center and move left and right 3 units. So if we start at 3, -2 and we move left 2 units, it will be at 0, -2. And if we start at 3, -2 and move right 3 units, we'll be at 6, -2. And the last thing we have to do is locate the focal points. So the focal points always lie on the major axis, and they are C units away from the center. So if we start at the center, 3, -2, and go up 2 units, we're going to be at 3, and we're going to write this way, -2 plus √7. And the last one is going to be starting at the center, 3, -2, and moving down √7 units. So that's everything that we need to know about that ellipse. You will see that letter F is not in the standard form for an ellipse, but if we were to divide both sides by 64, we can put it in standard form. So if we divide every term by 64, we get the following equation. We get x squared over 8 plus y squared over 64 is equal to 1, and now that ellipse is in standard form. That ellipse has a center of 0, 0. The value of a is 8 because a squared is 64. The value of b is equal to the square root of 8, which is 2√2, and b squared plus c squared is equal to a squared. So what would you have to add to 8 to get 64? You'd have to add 56. So c is the square root of 56. We can tell by looking at the equation of this ellipse in standard form that it also is longer in the vertical direction. So the endpoints of the major axis are going to be found by starting at the center and moving up and down 8 units. So the endpoints of the major axis are going to be 0 plus or minus 8. The endpoints of the minor axis are going to be found by starting at the center and moving left and right b units. So they will have coordinates plus or minus 2 root 2 comma 0. And the focal points will be found by starting at the center and moving up and down c units because it's a vertical ellipse. So 0 plus or minus the square root of 56. So now I would like you to take time to put G into a standard form and H into a standard form. Locate the endpoints, locate the center, the endpoints of the major and the minor axis, and the focal points, and graph them. When you're finished, hit play on the video so you can check your answers. As you can see, when you put G into a standard form by dividing each term by 225, you get x squared over 9 plus y squared over 25 is equal to 1. So we know we have an ellipse with the center at 0, 0. We know that A is equal to 5, B is equal to 9, and C is equal to 4. We also know that it's an ellipse that's longer in the vertical direction, so we start at the center and move up and down 5 units to get the endpoints of the major axis. We move left and right 3 units to get the endpoints of the minor axis, and we move up and down from the center 4 units to get the focal points. In letter H, we have to divide each term by 16, and we end up with x minus 2 quantity squared over 4 plus y plus 3 quantity squared over 16 is equal to 1, which means we have a center at 2, negative 3. Again, another vertical ellipse because the denominator of the y term is larger. And from the center at 2, negative 3, we have to move up 4 units to get to the endpoints of the major axis and down 4 units. We have to move left and right from that center 2 units to get to the endpoints of the minor axis. And again, from the center, we have to move up and down the square root of 12 units to get to the focal points. Now I would like you to review anything you need to this video and complete homework number 1 for the ellipses and make sure you check your answers.